gentlemen, and welcome to Obscura, the show where we look at the best and worst horror has to offer. I'm your host, The Fear Fan, and thanks for tuning in. Now, for those of you who have been watching, we've had a lot of firsts this year. We've had our first top 10 list, our first reboot, our first spin-off, and we've even won our first award. And today's no exception, because in this episode, we're going to be tackling our very first adaptation. For those of you wondering what an adaptation is, well, you seriously need to read more, but since we all know that isn't going to happen, I'll give you a quick definition. Basically, when someone takes a novel, a game, or a comic and translates that story into another medium, the result is called an adaptation, and when it's done right, the result delights fans of the original while introducing it to a whole new audience. And when it's done wrong, it unleashes a flaming, cataclysmic tide of nerd rage that burns with the fury of 1,000 suns. Lucky for us, today we'll be talking about an adaptation done right, 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now, there may be some of you who would argue that this is a remake of the first film version rather than an adaptation of the original novel, and although there are some compelling arguments for that, there is something you may not have considered. Whenever somebody makes a new film based off of Frankenstein, Dracula, or Romeo and Juliet, it's always considered an adaptation of the source material rather than a remake of the previous film. And like those other great books and plays, make no mistake that Jack Finney's The Body Snatchers is a classic. Over the years, it's inspired a number of adaptations, some good, some meh, and some that people pretty much forgot about after opening weekend. On top of that, it served as an inspiration for plenty of other projects as well. But despite all that, the question still remains, does this adaptation live up to the original? Well, there's only one way to know for sure, so let's tune in and find out. We open on a barren, dead world, where we discover what is either an alien species, or the contents of a 3-week-old Kleenex. Either way, the creatures decide that their world is indeed a piece of shit, and haul ass across the universe to San Francisco. To be honest, it's kind of a shame they didn't land in Detroit. If they had, they would have immediately assumed our planet was incapable of supporting life, and quickly moved on. Regardless, after landing, the spores, probably deciding that no one would pick up a fistful of snot, change their shape into flowers, and await their first victims. Of course, it may take months, or even years of patient waiting before someone comes along and decides to either pick the flowers or fall asleep near them. Or it could only be a matter of seconds until a group of school children comes by to pick them, thusly dooming the entire human race. Actually, knowing how most children are, they probably could have stayed little balls of snot and still gotten picked up. Also, there's a rather bizarre cameo by Robert Duvall at this point, where he plays a priest on a swing set. And before you ask, no, he doesn't have any other scenes, or really any bearing on the plot. He just sits there on a swing, dressed as a priest, staring at little children, and... yeah, write your own joke, I'm not touching this one with a 10-foot pole. I love little girls, they make me feel so good. Anyway, one of our main characters, Elizabeth, happens to pick up one of the flowers. She brings it home to her boyfriend, Jeffrey, a sports fanatic who has somehow stumbled upon a way of being both neglectful and horny at the same time.
Look at this flower.
All right, out of way!
Truly, a renaissance man of douchebaggery. Hey, even Rod could probably take some notes.
Hey, up yours with a twirling lawnmower.
Yeah, back at ya. Anyway, before we're forced to observe him having sex while watching the Super Bowl, our perspective shifts to one of Elizabeth's co-workers, Matthew, a health inspector who seems to take just a little too much pleasure in his work.
What is that?
A caper.
No.
Do you?
It's a rat turd.
A what?
A rat turd.
A caper.
A rat turd.
A caper.
If it's a caper, eat it.
Well played, sir. Although, believe me, you really don't want to know what's in the sour cream. So, while Matthew's out protecting the world from suspicious-looking capers, Elizabeth and Jeff fall asleep with the flower by their bedside. When she wakes up, she finds that Jeff is acting strangely, and although it bugs her throughout the day, it isn't until later that night that the true horror of the situation becomes clear.
Something's come up, Elizabeth. I have to go right back out again.
Now? Were we going to the game?
The Warriors, I know I gave the tickets to a patient.
You're not going to see tonight's game?
Wait. He gave away playoff tickets? Obviously, we're dealing with a monster here. Anyway, realizing the full extent of the evil she is facing, she heads over to Matthew's house to share her suspicions.
I can tell that there is something different. Something is missing. emotion, feelings. He's just not the same person.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like he's been replaced by a completely different kind of asshole. Anyway, the fact that Jeffrey no longer shouts touchdown when he orgasms isn't enough to convince Matthew that he's an evil doppelganger. However, as the day wears on, he can't help but notice that other people have been having the same problem.
That's not coffee.
That is coffee. I put it there myself.
You doctor, right?
Me? No, health department, civil service. You need a doctor?
My wife, sick.
What's wrong with her?
She wrong.
Well, no shit she's wrong. He just told her it was a coffee stain. So with his own sense of unease growing, Matthew meets up with Elizabeth at the office, and it's there that we meet the true mastermind behind the invasion. Evil janitor guy. Who, like Robert Duvall, has absolutely nothing to do with the movie, and therefore did not warrant that ominous slow zoom. No doubt a little creeped out by the way the janitor is staring at them while buffing the same patch of floor for hours on end, the two of them go for a drive with Elizabeth explaining her fears to Matthew.
Yesterday it all seemed normal. Today everything seemed the same, but it wasn't. It was a nightmare.
Okay, were you wearing pants? Because if not, it probably actually was a nightmare. Anyway, before Elizabeth can finish, Kevin McCarthy, star of the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, stops by for a clear, well-thought-out warning about what's going on in the city.
Oh, no, no, no! Oh, my God! Lock the door! Lock the door!
They're coming! They're coming! Help! Help! They're coming!
And, of course, by clear and well-thought-out, I mean raving and incoherent. Seriously, dude, Grandpa Simpson did a better job of warning people in the Simpsons movie.
Horrible! Horrible things are going to happen! Believe me! Believe me!
Anyway, before he can make any sense, his raving is cut short by the front bumper of a Chevy, as the citizens of San Francisco stand and watch, proving that they're either all pods by now, or that they're just jaded as fuck. Either way, since Matthew is worried about Elizabeth's sanity, he takes her to see his friend, psychologist David Kibner, who is celebrating the release of his new book. Once they arrive, they immediately run into Jeff Goldblum, who is, as always, playing Jeff Goldblum.
Kibner's book is awful. His ideas are garbage. Kibner's ideas are pure garbage.
How can you say that about a man like Kibner?
I'm not saying it about a man like Kibner. I'm saying it about Kibner.
Anyway, while Jeff Goldblum chews on Matthew's ear, Elizabeth spots Dr. Kibner, played by none other than Leonard Nimoy, as he uses cheesy pop psychology to heal a woman who has the same problem as she has.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid.
I know, and I understand. Let me have your hand. Catherine, listen. Just trust me. Come on. Here. It's not so bad, is it? Who's this behind you?
Kid.
That's right. Hold on. Come on, just hold on.
Oh, come on, that'd never work in real life. Although at least he didn't try to heal her with a sing-along.
In the middle of the earth, in the land of Shire, lives a brave little hobbit whom we all admire.
Anyway, after he's done talking her down, Kibner takes Elizabeth for a walk, trying to explain to her why she thinks her boyfriend isn't the same man. And oddly enough, that explanation involves kicking Jeff Goldblum's ass.
Belichick, I'm telling you for the last time, I want you to stop. I want you to stand still, be quiet, and shut up!
Jack,
What?
How did you feel about what I just did?
Why? Why in the stories and not?
How did you feel? You were probably shocked. You wanted to shut your feelings off, withdraw, maybe make believe that it wasn't happening because then you don't have to deal with it.
You're kidding, right? I just watched Jeff Goldblum fighting with Leonard Nimoy. I just wish I had my camera phone on me so I could put that shit up on YouTube. Anyway, after they're done with their impromptu revival of Celebrity Deathmatch, Matthew takes Elizabeth back home, while Jeff Goldblum, who's playing a character named Jack Belichick by the way, goes back to the spa he owns with his wife. Once there, he decides that he needs a little time alone.
Belichick, talking to you. Give me a hand. Help me out of this thing.
Don't feel too bad, Jeff. I hear that Shatner had the same reaction after filming Amok Time. Anyway, you may have noticed that there are surprisingly few pod people in the movie up until now, but that's all about to change, because I'm sure that all of this is leading up to something truly horrifying.
Every week we go like this. Why can't
Give me that towel.
Oh, dear sweet God, that's not what I meant. Although I guess it could be worse. I mean, at least there weren't any close... Oh, dear sweet Jesus, why? Well, although that was horrifying, at least it served some sort of purpose. Namely, making it less disgusting when Belichick's wife returns to discover a half-formed Jeff Goldblum clone on a massage table. Sensing the possibility of a threesome nearby, Belichick returns, and together they call Matthew to check out the body.
It's got an adult face.
It's a monster. It's got hair all over it.
Hey, lady, give the thing a break. It is trying to imitate Jeff Goldblum, after all. Anyway, worried that Elizabeth may be turned into a Jeff Goldblum clone as well, Matthew rushes to her place to save her. Once there, he's happy to discover that not all the pods look like Jeff Goldblum, but decides to rescue Elizabeth anyway because, hey, main character. Meanwhile, the Belichicks have called in Dr. Kibner to look at the body, only to find it mysteriously absent. And although Belichick is clearly puzzled, Kibner has his own explanation.
Face it, Belichick. You've got some friends who enjoy playing practical jokes.
I don't have any friends, Dr. Kibner.
Ha! That'll show you. Wait. So Matthew drops Elizabeth off, and after they learn that her double has been taken as well, everyone gathers together to discuss what's happening. Eventually, they convince Kibner that something's wrong, and he agrees to set up a meeting with the mayor. And of course, given how important such a meeting is, it's important to practice. So, go ahead. Mrs. Belichick, you tell the story, and Matthew, you be the mayor.
Of course, this is just the same way those rocket ships landed thousands of years ago so those spacemen could mate with monkeys and apes and create the human race. It's happening now.
Okay, that could probably use a little work, but bonus points to Matthew for a natural reaction. Although it probably wouldn't do them much good anyway, given that Matthew finds himself blocked at every turn when he tries to contact the mayor the next day. Realizing that most of the city has been taken over by pod people, our main characters decide to take the only remaining course of action. A big sleepover party. And no, I'm not joking. That's right, their solution to the massive conspiracy of alien imposters that clone and kill you in your sleep is to gather inside a single house and fall asleep at the same time. And of course, it comes as a huge surprise when Matthew wakes up to discover that his organic produce garden has a few new additions. And for added fun, I suggest showing the scene to your little sister and telling her that this is where her Cabbage Patch Kids come from. So before Southerpod finishes forming, Belichick's wife wakes everyone up. Matthew tries to call the cops, but realizes too late that he shouldn't have changed his phone service over to Southwestern Pod.
Hello, police. Officer, I would like to report 4 bodies in my backyard.
You all right?
Wait right there, Mr. Bennell.
How do you know my name?
You know, he probably should have been a little more suspicious when they offered him both unlimited minutes and an awesome flower that he should totally fall asleep next to. So, finally sick of leaving pods laying around and hoping that the main character falls asleep near them, the pods finally decide to actually, get them. They charge Matthew's apartment, and after Matthew takes care of his own duplicate, we learn that the pod people have roughly the same combat capabilities as the average bipolar ex-girlfriend, namely pointing accusingly while shrieking their asses off. One brief but incredibly ill-lit chase sequence later, they find themselves cornered on an old pier where it seems that Elizabeth is hallucinating from terror.
Jesus!
No, that would be a helicopter, but hey, A for effort. Anyway, since help from a higher power obviously isn't going to be forthcoming, Belichick and his wife decide to make a run for it, intentionally drawing the attention of the pods away from Matthew and Elizabeth as they go. And hey, why not? That plan's always worked out well for Jeff Goldblum in the past. So while Belichick is off playing pod tag, Matthew and Elizabeth snag a cab to the airport, and in a moment that's about as meta as you can get outside of New Nightmare, they discover that the cab is in fact being driven by director Philip Kaufman. And as an interesting side note, their terrified expressions are the result of the fact that Kaufman, who had notoriously poor eyesight, decided to do his own driving for this sequence. At night. Without his glasses. Either sensing a trap from their cabbie, or maybe just realizing they don't get paid enough to die in a car wreck, Matthew and Elizabeth make a run for their office, discovering along the way that although the pods are weak against gardening tools, a good stiff kick works plenty well. Anyway, they make it to the office where, after a brief brush with janitor Ted, they make it into their office just in time to teach us an important lesson in drug safety.
What are they?
Speed, it'll keep us awake.
How many are you supposed to take?
It says take 1.
Take 5.
So remember kids, if taking 1 pill works, taking 5 pills will work 5 times as well. You heard it from Invasion of the Body Snatchers first. So now that they're dosed up to the eyeballs on speed, Jack arrives at the office, but they quickly discover that he's now one of the pod people. Also, they discover who's been sabotaging them all along. My God, who would ever suspect Leonard Nimoy of being an emotionless alien? So after he evens them out with a dose of tranquilizers, Matthew decides to settle this in the most peaceful way possible, with a friendly game of darts. You're doing it wrong. Also, I've gotta say, the pods seem relatively easy to defeat so far. I mean, so far we've seen that their heads smash open from a gardening hoe, learned that a size 11 boot acts like kryptonite against their pod form, and now we see that a full-size pod person dies from a throwing dart to the back of the head.
Quick.
Jesus, at this rate they could probably take down the whole damn invasion by just punching them in the face. Damn it, movie, stop taking my jokes as suggestions. It's amusing for me, but embarrassing for you. Anyway, after heroically punching the old woman in the face, Matt and Elizabeth make a run for it, and a short ride later, they find themselves at Pods R Us, your one-stop shop for easily defeatable duplicates. Unfortunately, Elizabeth proves to be just as stoppable as their pursuers, and after suffering that bane of horror movie heroines everywhere, the twisted ankle, she sits down for a nap while Matt looks for a boat that they can escape on. When he comes back, he's horrified to find that falling asleep outside of a factory full of things that kill you when you fall asleep may not have been the best idea. Oh, come on, dude. Don't be sad. They gave you a naked one back. That's gotta count for something, right? Thankfully, Matt decides that freaky pod sex is entirely out of the question and proceeds to burn the ever-loving fuck out of the pod factory instead. He escapes the fire, and the next day, we see him wandering among the pod people, remaining emotionless to avoid detection until he hooks back up with Belichick's wife in a heartwarming reunion for the ages. Or maybe not. And to cap it all off, that's the last thing we hear in the movie, with the credits running in dead silence. Anyway, that's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and it's sort of alright, I guess. Alright, it's a great movie. The acting's great, the script's well written, and director Kaufman knows how to use darkness, silence, and minor background touches to craft a subtle, paranoid film that gradually ratchets up the tension until the unforgettable climax. Now, if I had to select only two factors responsible for the success of this movie, I'd point to the atmosphere and to the story. From the start, everything is a slow and brilliant build-up. Hitchcock once said that suspense was showing a bomb under a table, and then showing two people eating at the table unaware of its presence. This movie makes great use of that effect, in the sense that the audience knows what's going on, and desperately hopes that the characters figure it out before it's too late. Add to that the changing dynamics of the film, where the characters start out threatened by an outside force and by the end have become the outsiders, and you have yourself a great study in suspense. Now, since I always try to be fair and point out any flaws in the movies that I enjoy, I will say that it does get a little bit slow in points. Okay, but even the slow parts serve the film by making the second half seem all the more fast-paced. We're good, right? Okay. Anyway, I could heap praises on this film all day, but there's only one way for you to truly understand how good it is, and that's for you to go and see it. Anyway, that's all we have time for this week. Tune in next week as we take another look at the Elm Street series. Till then, this is the Fear Fan, signing out.
People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down. When you're strange, faces come out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name. When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're strange. People are strange when you're a stranger.